How do fractional CMOs hit the ground running? Hi, I'm Dean Way. Welcome to Fractional CMOs and the 90-Day Win. There's a lot of variety in how they kick off a new client engagement. In fact, there's so much variety, it's valuable to just listen to what opportunities they look for, what they tackle first, and what they wish wasn't true when they started a new project. So let's find out. James, hi James, how are you?
Hey Dean, how's it going?
Okay, James, so let's set up like a hypothetical, I was going to say imaginary, but let's say a hypothetical 1-year engagement, okay? You're the fractional CMO. In a second, we'll talk about early wins and stuff you go after. But first, what's like what are 2 problems you typically see, or what problems do you normally go on the hunt for on day 1 of an engagement? And let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Perfect. So I'll start there. I've been in the digital marketing space for 15 years, started in 2008. And before that, I owned a bunch of gas stations, a chain of gas stations. I had 6 of them. So I learned a lot about brick and mortar business. And then I semi-gracefully shifted into digital marketing in 2007 and 8. And I guess I've been a fractional CMO since 2010. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time. Right. Yeah. But that's kind of how I got there. So I'm here in San Diego, and I'm fractional CMO, and I also run networking events. I do 20 events a year, speaker series, and things like that. So to your question, you said, what are the 2 of the, repeat the question again?
What are 2 of the problems you either go on the hunt for because you expect to find them, or you just normally see when you start an engagement?
Yeah. I usually like to, because when I'm going into another project, either there's been someone there before me or they don't have anybody there at all. Right. So I've got a whole checklist and sheet that I use, and I really just start out. I start out with the SEO, really. I want to see where they're ranking, what their website, how fast it is, the speed of it, where they're going after. Are they ranking organically, or are they doing paid ads? So I start with all that. Then I move into a lot of the social media marketing, a lot of the branding, the content marketing. So I kind of look at all those things first. I need to see numbers and reporting and analytics. And I always do that. And I, record those numbers or screenshot them, because I want them to see this is where you were when I started with you. 90 days later, 6 months later, this is where you are now, thanks to my expertise. So I can always show my skills by analytics and reporting and numbers.
Fair enough. And then Lilli, what problems do you normally go on the hunt for, or do you typically see with your clients? And also, let the audience know a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lilli Dellheim, and I'm the founder of Anticipate Growth Strategies. We are a hybrid model of fractional CMO consultants and a micro agency. So I noticed that there was a gap when it came to fractional CMO work, where a consultant could come in and put together a really amazing strategy, but then the company didn't have the resources in-house or the expertise to hire the right people to execute it. So we do a bit of both, and I've been in marketing for about 15 years. So my whole jam is around strategy. I come in and I assess whether there is a true strategy. And by that, I mean things like, do companies really understand their audience? Do they have the right messaging frameworks in place? And are they pulling the right levers? After doing this for so long, one of my pet peeves in marketing is when people just sort of throw darts. It doesn't have to be that way, especially with digital marketing. We have enough analytics at this point to where you can create a strategy ahead of time and anticipate certain results without having to do a lot of guesswork. So the first thing I'm looking for is strategy. And then I'd say the second thing I'm looking for is that alignment between, do you know your audience and do you have the right messaging?
So then, Lilli, if you could choose, what sort of would be your preferred early win or early thing to show off in the first 90 days or so to a client?
Yeah. So for me, there is no such thing as low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is, do you have a strategy in place? I tend to work with clients who want to invest 3 months really doing the work to assess brand strategy, messaging strategy, content strategy. And I find that those are the best clients for me. I find that people who come to me who are like, we needed leads yesterday, tend to be in triage mode. And it means that they didn't do the strategy work up front, which sometimes means they don't value strategy work, period.
Right.
So to me, the low-hanging fruit, the results after 90 days is, okay, I have a strategy in place. I know who my audience is. I've done customer research and interviews, stakeholder interviews. I've really honed in on my personas. I've adapted my messaging to make sure we're really hitting the right people, because at the end of the day, you could look at ROAS, you could look at these key performance indicators, but they will be much more direct if you're hitting the right people. So it kind of goes back to like basic journalism that we learned in elementary school: who, what, where, when, why, how, right? So who are you targeting? What are you doing to get there? Why are you doing it? That's the KPI part. How are you doing it? Do you have the right team in place, the right technology in place? So maybe a tech audit. And then, things like how come? And that's really where you start to ask questions around, like, are we growing for growth's sake? Are we poised for long-term growth? Why have we set the KPIs that we have? So that's a lot of work. And I think 90 days is the perfect amount of time to answer some of those big questions.
And how about you, James? If you got to choose, what sort of like early win would you want to put up on the board?
Yeah, well, it really
Or
varies
first
on.
win?
Yeah, it varies on what type of client and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I've been a CMO for real estate offices, and just recently, the one that I just finished up, so 8 months there, was like a day spa that did medical Botox and lip fillers and things like that. And a win for us was, of course, getting people in the door. They had several locations, so it was a pretty decent sized company. But those are ones that are all like trackable, and we want to just make sure that if they're spending, and they wanted to spend a lot of their time on Instagram stories, and I'm like, this is not going to get you people in the door,
Yeah.
So they listened to me, and we finally focused more to their Google business page and to some Google ads and to some video content and some other things. But a lot of the companies I work with, they think they know where they're going. And the other example of throwing darts, they want to just try everything. And I'm like, I know what works. Your analytics, your Google Analytics and Google Search Console, it will tell us what works.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start there and then build our way out the other ways and control your brand and then get into campaigns and things like that. So that'd be an early win, is to show someone, hey, you got 12 more appointments this month than you did last month, or something like that. I just reporting and analytics is golden to me, and I've had some clients I've had 12 years now because they know that I'm going to deliver for them, so they don't want to get rid of me.
So James, then, like, for a new customer, let's say, what are you surprised that they're not seeing about their own business, or that they don't know about their own marketing until you start working with them?
I'm surprised on their lack of understanding how content can help them with marketing. I think a lot of times they'll just want to put like a landing page up, or do some email marketing with a newsletter and things like that, some older ways, and they're not caught up with the tech side of it, the retargeting. The one guy I've had 12 years, a mattress store. You go on his site, I am following you around, whether it's on Facebook or Google, everywhere. Our ads are showing up everywhere. So we, retarget and follow people around. And I think a lot of people that I start with, they have a good idea of what they think they want, but I bring them around to what they really need.
And then, Lilli, what are you sort of often surprised by what clients don't understand or don't know about their marketing or their business?
I think it's pretty common that people, including businesses, like to talk about themselves, but when it comes down to writing, they don't know what to say. And I know that's one of the needs you fill as well. So I'd say messaging. I think people don't know how to tell their own stories. And with that void, with that gap, they aren't necessarily moving their ideal customers to action. And so, they might have done things or said things the same way for a decade, but when we really audit it, and when we really audit who their audience is, and I present them with new ways to, maybe it's an emotional lever that we're pulling, in the nonprofit space, for instance, or in the B2B space, maybe we've focused too much on features and now we're really getting into benefits. And when we just kind of present that to the client, sometimes there can be resistance because it's like we've talked about our product in the same way for so long, right. But then really tying it to ROI and saying, like, we know that maybe we've done some A/B testing, and we know that with this new messaging, you're actually getting more leads. So yeah, I'd say people get tied to how they talk about themselves, or they're just not sure how to do it in the first place. And that's one of the first places I target.
It's one of the challenges for working with the fractional CMO guys. All right, then. Lilli, how about this then? Okay, so you've started an engagement, right? What should a CEO understand? This is going to be, giving away secrets here. What should a CEO understand about fractional CMOs to squeeze every last penny of value out of them for however long they're going to be there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that term, it's becoming more popular. So I think it's important as a CMO to really identify what that means for you. So are you a consultant? Are you coming in one day a week? Do you work by the project? Are you deliverables based? Like, I think it's important, first of all, for whoever this fractional CMO you've hired. I think it's important for them to have a business model that they can articulate. And then, I think that personally, I guess I can just speak to my business model a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's highly deliverables based. So my CEO counterpart knows exactly what they're getting from the outset. I've worked in this industry long enough to see where the ambiguity can cause tension. It can cause CMOs not to be rehired. And I've also been in the role of being a marketing director who has come in after a fractional CMO to take over a department, and just seen where consultants can come in and charge, a lot of money without really clear deliverables. So I'm very, very big on, clear deliverables. I've already mentioned a lot of the types of things someone would get with working with me, like a content strategy, a marketing strategy, a brand audit, a technology audit, persona development, all that R&D up front, things like that. And then execution. So clear framework around, okay, are we doing a content strategy, and what does that look like? Are we writing articles, and how many? And are we doing social media, and how many posts? And I think just very clear deliverables is my preferred method.
James, I have kind of the same question, but from a different angle. Like, how do CEOs, once they hire fractional CMOs, how have you seen them waste money?
Great question. I was all ready to answer the first one.
There you go. You can answer the other one if you want to. I can question either way, right?
Yeah. I think so. So the way I think they come into it, because it's new to some of them. They have their own in-house marketing people that they might be paying, $50,000-$60,000 a year, but they don't have my skill level. So they want to try to get as much time out of me as possible. So I try to be very clear up front. Depending on what percentage I only take on 4 or 5 clients. I have no desire to be a big agency anymore, and I got my networking thing on the side. So I'm really with. I'll tell them, there's 2 levels. It's 8 to 10 hours a month, or like 16 to 18 hours a month, or so, a little bit more in that range. So I kind of give them some one-on-one. Not so much they get one-on-one, but I really try to make it clear, because they like. I usually don't have to keep a clock on my time, but I've had a few that just keep pushing me to get more and more, like get there as much out of me, to squeeze as much out of me as they can. And then I can, when they really are squeezing, that's when I know, oh, this is my last month. He's gonna try to get as much as I can out of me, and then we're gonna let this go. And that's fine. I like moving around. I love different projects. I've worked in so many verticals over the last 15 years. It's crazy. So,
well, then
that's it. Or
James, let me ask this then. So it's going to happen either to you or it has, or you can imagine it happening? Like, what are sort of the red flags or signs that like this company really should not have hired a fractional CMO, or they just weren't ready for a fractional CMO yet?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a few that I've come. Well, like I said, the for me, and when you interviewed me, I really only heard the word fractional CMO earlier this year. I had no idea
Yeah.
what it was, but I've been doing it since 2010. So I just didn't know what to call it. So I was just digital marketing strategist or consultant for so long. So I'm kind of learning along the way. But when people come in, I really only want to go to people that I can help. I've turned down some work because I've looked at some projects and what they like. And when I meet, I do a discovery meeting. What are your expectations? What's your budget? What do you think? And I just get done. I'm just like, I don't think you're ready for me. So a lot of that comes down to a discovery meeting, whether I'm even going to hang my hat and work with them. And I want to keep my reputation well.
And what
So
are the signs that they're not ready?
uh,
Like one
the
or two?
signs already is they haven't set aside a budget or a team to do everything. They're kind of
Right.
expecting me to do all the fulfillment for them, and this is why I'm doing this, because I'm tired of fulfillment. So
Mm-hmm.
they come in with a different vision of what it's going to look like. So I have to take the reins and stand ground on what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. And I said one of the signs they're moving to let you go is when they're pushing you for more information, or they're going to change the passwords. Then you're pretty much out.
Yeah. And Lilli, you talk to a lot more companies than you ever work for. I mean, that's the nature of all of our businesses, right? So, like, what's an indicator that someone, a prospect, is really not likely to, or not ready to hire a fractional CMO yet?
Yeah, so I think budget's important. I think
Mm-hmm.
annual revenue is important, and I think there's a sweet spot for my business of the minimum we'll work with, just because by the time you invest in strategy and by the time you really implement that strategy, it is an investment. And so some of the things I look for is people who are treating marketing just that way, that it is an investment. As I mentioned earlier, people that are willing to put in the work up front to do strategy. So I think when somebody comes to me and they're in triage mode, they needed leads yesterday, their ability to pay their current staff depends on marketing bringing in leads very quickly. To me,
Right.
that's somebody who waited too long, maybe shouldn't invest in this type of consulting at this time, and should like double down on a few methods they know work, or they should reevaluate operations a little bit before they come. Because again, I'm always gonna stand behind, take the time to do strategy. It's the whole slow down to speed up approach. To me, what I've seen with the businesses I've worked for, they've seen incredible growth. For instance, like one company grew from 7 million to 21 million in 18 months because they took 3 months to do strategy up front. And some of that really rapid growth happened at the 6-month mark. So companies that are willing to treat marketing like an investment, they're not looking for leads overnight. They understand some of these practices like SEO, they can have a 12-month return, right, before you actually really start to see traction. And then the other thing that I've seen, like this happens more frequently than you would even imagine, is companies that think they want to grow, but they actually are not ready for the growth. So a lot of family-run companies, a lot of companies that have sort of done well by accident,
Right.
and then they're ready to bring on, they think they're ready for growth, they bring on a fractional CMO, and then the growth happens. And what it means is rethinking operations. What it means is sometimes restructuring. And there's that whole idea in business that like under 20 million is the death valley, right? And so like, are they really willing to look inward to say, are we going to make the changes and make the sacrifices we need to do to embrace growth? It's not so much that companies aren't able to do it. I actually find a lot of fear of growth. So not that they're not able to do it, it's that like before they even get started, I find companies are afraid of what growth really means. And so they'll actually self-sabotage. And it's really interesting. It comes up actually fairly often.
Oh, that's depressing. Good to know. Yeah, I understand what you mean though. Yeah, it's like kind of like if some growth is good, more is better, right? And not realizing that their business is essentially between, development, operations, and logistics and distribution and whatever, right? It's just a series of rope bridges, and you can't put a whole bunch of extra weight on one rope bridge because it'll break, and then like nothing gets, everything
Correct.
needs to be
Yeah.
reinforced along the way, right?
Correct. And I don't see it as depressing. I see it as an opportunity as long as it's structured
Yeah.
and framed that way, right? So to your point, if marketing starts performing really, really well, yeah, there's going to have to be a moment of looking at things like operations and fulfillment and logistics. And that's an opportunity to restructure a whole business, but it can be very daunting. So let's call it daunting instead of fear of failure. But sometimes people they feel that process is daunting. And that to me just shows a lack of mindset of marketing is highly cross-functional. It's interconnected with all other departments, and I look for clients that have that mentality already.
All right, let's. This has been great. I really enjoyed this so far. Thanks, guys. I have one more question. Okay, so do you think that most? You're not talking about yourself necessarily, but do you think that most fractional CMOs, let's say at the end of their engagement, have they been revenue neutral, or have they been a profit center for the company? And by that I mean, like, you can bring in a fractional CMO kind of similar to the way like you might bring in a project manager. Most project managers are revenue neutral. That is, you pay them, but they fix or make more efficient or avoid expense somewhere else, so that you end up with the management without having to pay for it, but you haven't made money off it. And then there are like a very small percentage of project managers who you can actually like send them into a client, and they'll come out with like, yeah, they need a bunch more work done, and like, here's a bunch of money we didn't expect, kind of stuff, right? Do you think most fractional CMOs are revenue neutral or profit centers, and why? Anyone who wants to jump in can jump in.
I'll go first. I think when they're coming to you, they already have high expectations. I think they've exhausted their current in-house marketing team, and they're coming in expecting, they're coming in expecting some results from your CMO. So it's a lot of pressure, but I like the excitement. I'm like, of course I do my research before I bring it on, before I bring them on, but I can't really speak for the others. I don't know that many people that are in this space, just a handful of them, really. So it's just something I'm going to kind of talk with my friends and things about. But I wanted to add something that Lilli said, which is interesting. These companies aren't ready for the growth when it's going to happen. That's one of the things in my discovery meetings. Let's just say it's a real estate office, or maybe the med spas. I was like, you have 10 customers a week. What if you had 100 a week or 200? Would you be ready? And the look on their face sometimes, they're like, oh, I'd love it, but no. Like they
You didn't ask them if they would like it. You asked them if they could take it.
Yeah. I go for the reaction. I've taken some classes on reading body language and people and everything, and it's really cool. So that's one of my questions that she reminded me that when Lilli said that. That's one of the things I go into and go, hey, well, so this is where you're at. And if we get you here, you're selling 2 houses a month, you're selling 12. Do you have the team in place? Yeah. We'll get it. We'll get it. I'm like, well, you need to think this out further. So that's all I had on that right now.
And Lilli, what do you think? Are most fractional CMOs a profit center, or at a minimum, do they sort of like break even for the company?
So a fractional CMO should be generating profit for the company.
Yeah.
As far as the time frame, that's a discussion.
Negotiable.
I think one thing people need to look out for is this is becoming a more popular term. And so when you go to work with someone, they might have a really clear methodology, but what you need to look for is their track record. Do they have case studies? Have they created money before, and how long did it take, and what was the process? Similarly, I can't really speak to others, but I can speak to myself. I'm not doing the company that I'm working for a service if I'm not generating leads and profit and moving the needle. I work very closely with sales. I don't see them as siloed teams. I think they need to be highly collaborative. But ideally, you're hiring somebody who has the strategic framework that can make major decisions in your business. I'll give you an example. I worked with a SaaS company that had kind of an outdated sales process. They had somebody fill out a form on their website. A sales manager would get in touch with them, schedule a call, they jump on the call, etc. But the people that were coming, once we did some research, that were coming to this membership-based platform, they were ready to put in their credit card information right then. So when we just made that simple shift, that changed profit margins quickly, like extremely quickly. We could make that shift in a few weeks. So that ideally you're hiring a fractional CMO because they can come in and see things that you can't see, like maybe your sales process is outdated, and they should be making those changes, and they should have the authority to make those changes to impact your bottom line.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for this. This has been great. Lilli, your URL is on the page, but how should people contact you and who should contact you?
Yeah, so again, companies that are ready to invest in strategy, companies that sort of have gotten lucky with marketing, but they're ready to get scientific about it, that are really willing to invest the time and the money. I don't really work with companies that are less than 5 million ARR. And then they can find me on anticipategrowthstrategies.com and on LinkedIn at Lilli Dellheim. And those are probably the best ways to find me.
And James, who should be reaching out to you right now, and how should they get in touch with you? What's your preferred way?
Well, who should be reaching out would be startup companies. I've worked with several funded startup companies, maybe well-funded startup companies, and I like chains. Once I had 46 steakhouses in Kansas City, in Montana area, and I oversaw all of them and 200 Massage Envy locations. So I like big companies like that, that I can oversee their team. And the way you contact me is through my website, jamesmhickey.com or jmhmarketinggroup.com. And then on LinkedIn, James Hickey. And I just 6 months ago, I changed it to James Hickey, Digital Marketing Strategist -- Fractional CMO. And that's probably how you found me, because I didn't have those words. You probably searched CMO and found me. So there you go.
There you go.
Marketing at its finest.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Lilli. Thanks, James. This has been great. And see everybody later.